We are on the march. The empire is on the run. You're listening to The Alex Jones Show.
You're back on The Alex Jones Show. Alex will be coming up in the next segment to cover the latest news. But for the moment, in this final few minutes, let's hit a few more news stories that I've found of interest. Now, we were talking about Taylor Swift. She's been absolutely slammed for not being political during the 2016 election, for not throwing her weight in with Hillary Clinton or coming out against Trump in the aftermath of his inauguration. Because God forbid an entertainer would just want to concentrate on, I don't know, entertaining people. No, if she's not part of your Trump derangement syndrome hysteria, she's basically trash. Now they're coming after Taylor Swift. We have Jon Stewart. There you see the Marie Claire tweet. We're still waiting for an explanation of Taylor Swift's decision to remain apolitical during the 2016 election. #reputation. Look, they only got 163 retweets. Then if you look in the comments of that tweet, the Marie Claire tweet, they got absolutely slaughtered. So they're going after Taylor Swift because she wants to remain apolitical, which jives with what people are saying when you poll them about the NFL or about Hollywood. When they watch a movie or a football game, they just want to be entertained. They don't want to be confronted with politics and hysteria all the frigging time. Can you just give it a rest for 5 minutes? No, they have to destroy everybody because it's part of the #resistance, which is the hysteria that is built up out of Hillary Clinton losing. And that's the sole reason. They're still butthurt about it over a year later. Jon Stewart's come out. This is Newsbusters. Jon Stewart, to anyone who wants even-handed comedy, tough, S-H-I-T. Liberal comedian Jon Stewart on Tuesday ranted at anyone who isn't happy with the politicized tone of late-night comedy. And boy, is it politicized. Telling the New York Times, tough, S-H-I-T. Of course, he also slimed conservatives as bigots for objecting to the angry liberalism of Jimmy Kimmel or Seth Meyers. Jon Stewart said, quote, "The people that say this culture isn't for me live in a nostalgic world. Those are the people who are first to tell minorities, suck it up." So Jon Stewart's basically saying, no, everybody has to be hyper-partisan, even in comedy. Now, we were amazed a few days ago when Saturday Night Live came out and did a skit that made the Democrats look a little bit goofy, because it's so rare now. They've signed over everything to this #resistance hysteria that being funny has gone out of the window. Okay, most of this is drab, it's pathetic, it's not even funny anymore. They've got like teams of 20, 30 writers on this. You put on Jimmy Kimmel and it's him ranting about gun control for 20 minutes. What happened to the comedy? What happened to Jon Stewart and Stephen Colbert back when they were actually funny on The Daily Show like 15 years ago almost, bashing both Republicans and Democrats? That was actually funny. Now it's this unhinged, hysterical urge to have Trump impeached simply through hysteria alone. I mean, there was a thing today where he put out a tweet, which was obviously a drafted tweet that had been saved on his phone from before he went abroad, about the Silverland Springs church shooting. He comes back from Asia, it gets tweeted out, it's, oh my God, absolute meltdown. Trump made a mistake in a tweet that was drafted and sent out from his phone. Oh my God, surely an impeachable offense, right? This is the level of hysteria. You saw it with feeding the fish. There you see the headline. It was a tweet that was saved in his phone, obviously a draft from before he left the country. It was sent out. Absolute meltdown. You saw the hysteria about the fish. Oh my God, the fish. He dumped the fish food. How boorish. This is a diplomatic incident, some of them even suggested. Of course, it was completely fake news. But this is a level we've reached right now, where even at the expense of their own industries, with box office income plummeting, with NFL audiences turning off, with ESPN's audience, their viewership collapsing, they still insist on injecting Trump derangement hysteria into everything. They're quite prepared to cut off their nose to spite their face. It's absolute intense overload, hysteria, and now Jon Stewart signed onto it, and Taylor Swift will be destroyed because she refuses to do so. Don't go away. This is the Alex Jones Show Live. Breaking news at Infowars.com. We'll be right back.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now into hour number 2. I am your host, Alex Jones. We just had Paul Watson on, extremely powerful information and analysis. And we've got more with Paul in a tape report he did, The New Sexual Puritans, showing how the left is equating normal sexual activity and normal courting between men and women as sexual assault, but then basically trying to cover up for what Hollywood and other organizations are doing when it comes down to trying to even mainline pedophilia. So that's all coming up a little bit later in the hour. More with Paul Joseph Watson. Now, we've got some really serious news I wanted to just mention before I get into the big news that's up on Infowars.com from Paul Joseph Watson. Ex-Secret Service agent claims Biden engaged in Weinstein-level groping. He would mess with every single woman or teen. It was horrible. Well, I don't need to hear that from a Secret Service agent to know it's true. We have put out, over the last 4 or 5 years, it's got to be more than 15 reports, some of which are an hour long. And Paul Watson has a bunch of examples of these in his article, of 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 13, 14. I mean, he comes over, grabs them by the arm, is clearly rubbing on them, rubbing on their buttocks. It is the creepiest thing I've seen since that drag queen festival they had last weekend in Austin, where men are shaking their butts in small children's faces and dressed as women, and then little girls and boys are giving them money, and then men are totally naked except for glitter on their genitals. So it just goes on and on. Creepy Joe Biden has been known for this for decades, but he does it on C-SPAN. He did it when he was in the White House as the VP. And so I think it's critical, coming up later in the broadcast there, maybe with Owen Schroyer at 3 o'clock on the War Room, maybe we should just air, during a 3-hour show, maybe an hour of groping, because you've got to see it to believe it. I know we're mainly a radio show, but we can give you commentary of it. You got to go see it for yourself. Now, here's the deal. The Democrats are defending Biden. They've been defending Bill Clinton for decades. When we first heard that Roy Moore was being accused by people connected to Hillary's previous campaign, who'd worked for her and who'd worked for the candidate who he's running against, Mr. Jones in Alabama, I thought this looks suspicious because we saw false charges against Trump that turned out to be totally made up by Jane Does that didn't exist. And I said, wow, the news is he told girls they were pretty, because that's what I first read. But then by the time Moore came out that same day last week, what was it, Wednesday, Thursday, by the time Moore came out on Moore, it was like, well, I did date teens when I was 35, but I did ask their mama's permission. And that's the creep zone, okay? It's weird. And then the trolling around the malls trying to pick up teenage women, okay? That's not illegal, but it's creepy. And it's par for the course for these politicians. So now Stephen Bannon has turned on him. Drudge Report has the headline, Bannon turns on Judge Whore. Now, I'll say this. There's been no allegations of this past the time he got married. And I don't think what he did was probably illegal, but we don't know. The issue here is the headlines are being run that revolutionary Republicans, Trump-supporting Republicans, libertarian Republicans, Freedom Caucus Republicans are stumbling, are crippled, are in deep trouble, are having huge problems dealing with the fact that all of this is unfolding, and it hurts their brand. Alabama Senate nightmare leaves Republican revolutionaries spiraling. Wait, Hollywood has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that have been caught engaged in pedophilia, you name it. You've got raping of children, and none of them are even getting in trouble. Where are the indictments? Where are the criminal arrests? So again, you have these two different yardsticks where conservatives find some bad apples or potentially bad apples, and it's the end of the world, and we all take on the guilt, and it's our fault. No, it's not my fault. Judge Roy Moore may have been involved in some creepy behavior. And all I'm saying is, if you're going to have national news about the sexualization of teenage women, 16, 17, 18 years old, as low as maybe 14, which I think starts getting into the pedophilia zone, serious issue, not just statutory rape, then we've got to look at the drag queen festival they had in Austin and all these others, where full-grown men come up and shake their butts in little boys' and little girls' faces and then pose naked with only glitter on their genitals with little boys and then kiss on them. I mean, I don't even want to show the photos again we showed that they posted on their own Facebook of men with nothing on with little kids. I mean, if you're going to sit there and notice, none of the media picked that up, Millie Weaver and Gavin Wentz's powerful report, because they did it fairly. They did it straight on. They were invited in. It was there. They said, sure, videotape it. The group posted it to their own Facebook and Twitter. There's hundreds of YouTube videos the groups shot. They were live streaming. They were completely proud of men on stripper poles hanging down with 3-year-old little white kids and black kids and little girls and boys walking over confused, giving $5 bills to obese men wearing thongs and garter belts. And the media's like, look, Jones is bashing drag queens because they're fat. Well, yeah, Playboy was full of 500-pound women. You'd say, what's wrong with Playboy? I mean, that's the added thing, is there's like a celebration of big fat men with wigs on, with little kids giving them money when they're on stripper poles, and the men are beyond twerking, shaking their big butts in little kids' faces, man. This is like something out of a PCP hallucination. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane that no media covered it except Media Matters, run by George Soros and David Brock, and they didn't say what I was talking about in their article. They just had a little snip of me saying, why are so many of these drag queens super fat? I mean, what is the issue? So I was showing a transsexual libertarian lady, Blair White, that got beat up for wearing a Make America Great Again hat. And I said, where are the ones that look like this lady? I'm just saying, why is she a libertarian and then the liberal drag queens or transsexuals are super ugly? I mean, I have a right to say that what is up with a bunch of ugly men dressed like women shaking their butts in little kids' faces? And I have a right to sit here and say then, okay, Judge Roy Moore trolled them all, and he admits that he dated teenagers. I think that's creepy. I think that's weird. I don't think it's illegal, but if some of the stuff's true, and it's been put into question because they're Democratic operatives and other things, I've got some serious questions. And again, it's not like I am the ultimate Puritan on the planet, okay? It's just that it shows arrested development in a man when he's 35, if he's going after 16-year-old girls and then asking their parents if he can date them. It just sounds like some type of weird Netflix series about a creepy, weird town or something. I'm sorry. Now, again, Hollywood's 10 times, 20 times, 100 times more creepy with devil worship and pedophilia and sexualization of children and targeting the family and targeting America and going after everybody. So I am way more mad at them, and then I'm even madder that the whole media is covering Judge Roy Moore and some of his what appears to be creepy behavior versus the giant mountains of stuff they're involved in, and Joe Biden groping little girls hundreds of times on television, grabbing them, taking control, fathers reaching over and pushing him aside, little girls up there in the Senate, and here comes Biden trying to grab on her, and Senator Sessions slaps his hand. That was only 2 years ago. We've got the footage of that. I mean, this is crazy. This is out of control. This is the reality of what's going on, and we have to face it, and it freaks me out to go, Judge Moore too? I mean, good God, how many of these people are there? What happened? I mean, I just had no idea there were so many people into children or into underage people, and it makes me want to throw up, and it wants me to find out why this is happening, and it makes me want to stop it. But is the Republican Libertarian Revolution derailed if this is true, that one guy was on the weird spectrum but not even in the pedophile spectrum, so we're now all guilty, but Hollywood's a bunch of angels? No! Part of the radio show today is live with me in studio, and Paul Watson as well from London. But part of it is also taped while I take care of business in and around town. But I will be back in studio here coming up in just a little while. Well, you talk about hypocrisy, and I want to be clear before the media spins this, the fake news media, the corporate media. Judge Roy Moore involved himself in creepy behavior in his own admissions. recording girls that were 14, 15, 16, 17 years old. I don't care if it was 35 years ago. It was weird. Is it pedophilia? No, but it does border on very, very serious creepiness. And if he forced himself on some of these young women, it would be statutory rape. But they're not saying he raped them. They're saying he tried to force himself on them. So that would be sexual assault. That said, we have hours of footage of Joe Biden groping little girls and women on television, on C-SPAN and at the White House on national television. There's hours of it. Paul Watson has an article out today where a Secret Service agent has come out and said that it was Weinstein level of women and teens. Well, I don't need to know that from the Secret Service agent or others. He does it on television. Hell, we got Senator Sessions swatting his hand away from a 5-year-old girl on video. I mean, it's well known he's like Weinstein. These people are completely entitled, out of control. We've got countless videos of fathers pushing his hand off their daughters. I mean, he grabs them by the arm, he pulls them into him, he says, "You're gorgeous, you're beautiful," whispers in their ear. More aggressively than I did to women in college that I wanted to pick up. You know, at a bar or wherever. I mean, come over, tell them they're gorgeous. Let's dance. Let's go have fun. Hey, let's go see a movie. What do you like to do for fun? And only if they looked interested would I start petting them on the arm. This is like a 20-year-old woman, not grabbing them by the arm. I mean, women would bolt if you did that. So there's a super creepiness to this. And all I'm saying is, if the Republican Party is going to sit there and decry Roy Moore and flip out about all this and act like it's the end of the world, why are they so silent on Bill Clinton and on Joe Biden and on even Weinstein? We hardly hear from them. And the truth is, because they're going with the mainstream media, and they know the mainstream media is aware of their scandals, and a bunch of them have mistresses or gay or have been dating underage women or boys, young men, and or pedophilia. Remember, Barney Frank said, everybody better stop investigating my 3-story townhouse that they were running an underage brothel out of. I mean, 12, 13-year-olds. That was confirmed. That was the low end. Most of them are like 16, 17. It's criminal. And he said, half the people in here are involved. So you shut it down, and you shut it down now. That's on C-SPAN. And, you know, a lot of congressmen and folks have exposed it. They end up dead. So this is the secret society system they use to control people. And all I'm saying is, when we first heard he was telling people their daughters were pretty and all this, they were 16, 17, I thought, well, a little creepy. But now we're hearing all this other stuff. It's bad news. And the Republicans are calling him Judge Roy Whore. And that's the headline on Drudge, Judge Whore. Bannon turning on Judge Whore, and now the media is branding it like conservatives are to blame, and that conservatives are now discredited, and the whole libertarian movement's discredited because we got one guy trying to ask out girls that are underage. You got Biden telling them they're sexy and they're pretty when they're 8 years old on video and patting on their butts and feeling all over them, and some of the parents come over and go, "Whoa, dude," and like push him off. We've shown the footage, we've covered it, but the media never picks it up. But Paul Watson has a bunch of examples posted in his article. Ex-Secret Service agent claims Biden engaged in Weinstein-level groping. How far are we into this live feed?
We are 4 minutes.
Fantastic, because I'm going to go another 4 or 5 minutes to finish up for this segment. Then I'm going to continue on for everybody watching live, and we'll air this on the radio later as well. Because what I do is when I got family stuff to take care of or whatever, I'll tend to come in and take part of the show early or have guest host on. But there's so much breaking news that I'm going to be popping in and out today live, and live feeds I'm going to do that'll also end up being taped that we air on the radio. So here it is. Ex-Secret Service agent claims Biden engaged in Weinstein-level groping of women and teens. Quote, "It was horrible." Well, that's par for the course here. So all I'm saying is, if we're going to have a national conniption fit over Judge Roy Moore, that we don't have video doing any of this, and a lot of it's been proven to be untrue and political operatives. But Moore admits he was pursuing 16-year-olds at 35. I mean, I'm sorry. I think that's creepy. But it's kind of an old-timey thing. It's kind of like the Muslims do, where, well, before your daughter runs off with the wrong guy, see if the young prosecutor, wants to end up marrying your daughter when they're 18. That is an old Southern thing. People used to get married when they were 13 on the wagon trails. Founding fathers, some of them had 16-year-old wives. The point is that back then, development wasn't arrested. You were doing chores when you were 5 years old, shooting guns when you were 5 years old, and as soon as you went into puberty, a few years, families would try to get you with an up-and-coming successful man so that you would be well-placed. The Muslims do it to the extreme, and I don't like all that Orthodox stuff. So that's where I stand as a father of 3 daughters, man. If some 35-year-old man came around and wanted to date my daughter when she's 16, I got a 14 and a 9-year-old daughter, and I've got a 6-month-old daughter, I say, listen, man, that's creepy. Get the hell out of here. The argument is, okay, well, your 16-year-old daughter probably date gangbangers, and end up getting, I mean, I understand the whole mindset of, what your daughter brings home, a white supremacist maybe, or a thug, or a prisoner, a prison guy, or a gangbanger, or a drug dealer. That's where this comes from, this fear of rural conservatives, that if you could introduce your, young daughter to the 25-year-old guy whose daddy owns a lumber yard, well, she's going to be well placed. That's where this comes from. I'm not defending it. I'm not supporting it. What I'm saying is we have Bill Clinton. We have Joe Biden. We have Weinstein not indicted yet. We have all this off the radar now. And the hundreds of convicted pedophiles still working in Hollywood and all of it. And the only thing on the radar is Judge Roy Moore. Meanwhile, Al Franken joins the House Intelligence Committee hearing we had last week. This is the Senate, calling for all conservative media to be banned off social media, Twitter, Facebook, Google, YouTube, all of it, because we're Russians. They called Rand Paul a Russian. They've called everybody a Russian. They've called me a Russian agent. They've called Trump that. They've called Matt Drudge that. They've called Tucker Carlson that. I mean, this is the globalist socialist that wants to recreate Soviet Russia here in America. That article's on drudgereport.com, Dr. Jerome Corsi. Very important to read. Meanwhile, other big serious news, Black Death Plague ravaging Madagascar. That's the big island off of Africa. And it gets worse as antibiotics aren't working. That's the big threat. Antibiotic, immune, TB, Black Plague, you name it. That'll definitely screw things up. We're going to be covering that. Alaska told to stockpile anti-radiation pills in case of North Korean nuclear attack. That's all escalating right there. SpaceX is launching a secret mission. So now these private companies got secret missions to space Thursday. Here's what we know so far. And that's not a whole hell of a lot. They're just using it for hype. AP exclusive. U.S. scientists try first gene editing in the body. Yep, they're going to edit how you behave and what you do, and they got animal-human hybrids and all this. They just make jokes about it whenever I cover it. AP exclusive. U.S. scientists try first gene editing. I mean, that is just not true. It's been going on a long time. They're just telling you what's going on. Amazon's cashierless store is almost ready for prime time. Yeah, shop, shop, shop. While you put Main Street and even Walmart out of business, thought it was predatory. Meanwhile, the robots are coming in to replace everything.
We're now witnessing the birth pangs of a sexual reformation, the fallout from the sex abuse scandals that have plagued the entertainment industry, politics, and are now spreading throughout society as a whole, is being hijacked by the far left, cultural Marxists, feminists, and social justice warriors to whip up more misandry and create more gender division. Third wave feminism has been largely discredited over the past 5 years. Just 18% of women in the US now identify as feminists, even less in the UK. And it's obvious why. Now that rights which actual feminists fought for 100 years ago have been achieved, they're left with what? Making sourdough bread out of their vaginal yeast. Yeah, really. While it's sorely needed in the Islamic world, the West needs feminism like a fish needs a bicycle, which is why third-wave feminists and social justice warriors need to constantly invent or hijack new outrages to push their primary narrative. Hating men, which is why they're now hijacking the moral panic surrounding the sex abuse scandal in a desperate effort to resurrect the failed ideology of third-wave feminism as part of a catastrophically damaging plan to impose a new onerous form of sexual puritanism. The preeminence of innocent until proven guilty is being jettisoned. Now, mere accusation alone is enough to ruin someone's career. Do you understand how dangerous that is? Roy Moore has vehemently denied the allegations against him, but to the baying mob, Allegations are all that's required to pass judgment. Now, don't get me wrong. If sexual abuse is admitted or proven, these people should be punished to the full extent of the law. And as my regular viewers will know, I've been the most vehement out of anyone calling for Hollywood and political pedo rings to be exposed. But trial by social media mob outrage isn't justice, and it sets a horrific precedent. Everything is being conflated to the point where making a pass at a woman is placed in the same context as actual sexual assault. As Laura Prendergast writes in The Spectator, women are jumping on the hashtag #MeToo bandwagon so they can smother themselves in attention-seeking victimhood. Not because they're actual victims, but in one case, because a man looked at them. Another storm was whipped up over Adam Sandler touching a woman's knee on a talk show.
So I took my parents, just like you. I took my parents. And
in another instance, an MP was outed after he called a woman attractive, intelligent and charming. Another case involved Michael Fallon trying to kiss a woman. No, there's a world of difference between looking at someone, complimenting them, trying to kiss them, trying to touch them on the knee, and raping them. Big difference. As a result of the comparatively innocuous allegations against him, Carl Sargent committed suicide.
Was found dead yesterday, just a few days after he was dismissed from his post as Cabinet Secretary for Communities and Children.
The family wished to disclose the fact that Carl maintained his innocence and he categorically denied any wrongdoing. The distress of not being able to defend himself properly against these unspecified allegations meant he was not afforded common courtesy, decency, or natural justice.
You can't make the cost of sexual interest not being reciprocated the complete ruination of a man's career, his reputation, and even his life. You can't brand someone who sent a risque text or made a clumsy advance a pervert or a molester. There has to be a clear distinction between that and actual sexual assault. There has to be an understanding that accusation alone isn't proof. We have to put a check on this cult of instantly believing the accuser without any regard for evidence.
Any woman who reports an assault should be heard and believed.
The new feminist crusade is about indoctrinating women to advocate victimhood rather than equality. The hysteria of widespread sexual assault is moving us back to a chaperone culture, a modesty culture. From proposals to segregate trains, to banning scantily clad women in advertisements, to modesty wear on catwalks. The irony is that we're moving closer to how Islamic societies treat women. We're mimicking the most misogynistic places on earth. And what pisses me off the most is that these same feminists now hijacking this scandal to legitimize their crusade against straight white men have for years now ignored the fact that we're importing a real rape culture in the form of mass Islamic immigration, a policy that has resulted in women being molested en masse on numerous different occasions.
Cologne, Germany, where large crowds of what police describe as Arab men began sexually assaulting terrified young women.
Dozens of men surrounded her and her female friends, touching them everywhere.
Sex attacks by migrants against women in multiple European countries are skyrocketing. What did feminists have to say about that? Nothing. In Cologne, feminists responded to the mass molestation of women by migrants on New Year's Eve 2015 by visiting the local migrant centre and handing out roses. Something sinister is happening. Whereas the rules and dogma of sexual morality were once enforced by religious groups, they're now being enforced by feminists. This is a sexual counter-revolution, and sex-negative feminists are the new Puritans. Young men in the West have already had their confidence decimated by years of being hectored about toxic masculinity, years of lies and smears about a college rape culture that was completely exaggerated. Many young men are now growing up terrified of even approaching women for fear of being seen as predatory. This actually serves to fuel the online hookup culture, where mindless sex is understood as the common outcome, but it's ultimately disastrous for stable, strong, long-lasting relationships. Men are being lectured like little boys born with original sin about what behaviours are acceptable. Case in point, this article, 20 things men can do right the fuck now to support women beyond just literally ceasing to sexually harass us. This feminist just brazenly exploits the whole Me Too hashtag outpouring to demand all men
become deranged social justice warriors to make up for it. Support abortion. Shut up. Stop watching non-ethical porn. Support Black Lives Matter. Don't use pejorative terms like SJW and feminazi. This is what I'm talking about. You don't want to be like all those evil sexual abusers, do you? Oh, well, you better sign on to all my demented far-left political beliefs then. No. Go fuck yourself. That's not going to happen. As Douglas Murray writes, this isn't a guide to helping men. It's a manifesto for torturing them. Feminist Lindy West was given a platform by the New York Times to make the same twisted argument. Men are evil and sexist, and they need to repent by embracing all my political viewpoints.
Men 1963 to 2016. Why are feminists such man-haters? Men 2017. Oh!
You see what they're trying to do, right? Men are being browbeaten into accepting blame for the entirety of the sexual abuse scandal just because they happen to have the same genitals as the abusers.
And the question is not, are we sexist? It is, do we know that we are sexist? We are all complicit in this as men.
No, all men are not complicit, you collectivist piece of I'm not complicit in Louis C.K. masturbating in front of women. I'm not complicit in Harvey Weinstein groping women. I'm not complicit in Kevin Spacey sexually molesting boys. And neither are all men. The vast majority of men have never done anything like that and never will. Why are all men being blamed when the real blame should lie at the feet of those within these industries who covered up and turned a blind eye to what they knew was going on for decades? And isn't it interesting how we're being told to hyper-focus on certain people and not others? Look, when you castigate an entire gender for the actions of a relative few, you don't create more respect for women. You create resentment and more division between the sexes. You create hypocritical, virtue-signaling, soy boy male feminists who invariably turn out to be abusers of women, having lectured us for years about how misogynistic we are. This whole hysteria is being exploited by postmodernists to resurrect the idea that men, the patriarchy, and ultimately the capitalist system itself is a perverse architecture of oppression that needs to be torn down. And let's not be naive. Sexual abuse is abhorrent, but if you're going to claim that some women don't sleep their way to the top, you're a liar. Sorry if that offends you, but it's true. And it doesn't mean that all women are sluts. It's also true that some men abuse their power to bully women into sex. But that doesn't mean that all men are would-be rapists. Fact is, power is an aphrodisiac, and a lot of women throw themselves at powerful men. This leads powerful men to believe that they can just have any woman, and that's when they run into trouble. Men, don't be don't shout at women in the streets. Don't invade their personal space. Don't treat them like idiots.
Respect women.
But equally, don't self-castrate just because you've been told to feel guilty by some fat control freak feminist about something Harvey Weinstein did that's got nothing to do with you. Don't adopt far-left political views as some twisted form of reparations just to satisfy some autistically screeching social justice warrior. Don't feel ashamed of your masculinity. Don't allow your confidence to be shattered. Don't accept any form of collectivism that demonizes an entire gender for the actions of a relative few.
I'm asking the listeners and viewers of this transmission to do something that I myself forget to do often, and that's to really sit back and look at the world and think of where we were just 5 years ago versus where we are today. If you talked about world government or the EU army, they would say you were insane, it didn't exist. If you talked about the private Federal Reserve, they would either say the Federal Reserve doesn't exist or that it's public. Now, everyone knows it's private and running the government. And now, anyone who is halfway informed knows that President Trump is taking control away from these multinational groups and has killed the TPP and brought sovereignty back. But Trump is only one manifestation of this global awakening. You are the heart, the blood, the guts, the bones, the sweat, the tears, the eyes, the legs, the feet, the arms, but most importantly, the soul of humanity. You are humanity. And Hollywood and the globalists have done everything they can to try to poison humanity and to try to turn us against each other. But more and more people are coming out of their trance and they're seeing through it. When I say humanity is at a critical, determinative crossroads, all of you instinctively already know it to be true. I'm only saying things that you already know at your gut level, at a spiritual level, at an economic level, at an intellectual level. And so we know what's happening. We understand what's going on. And the globalists have now gone from denying their global program to now having to admit their program, which is a very austere, anti-human, neo-feudalistic, artificial dark age meant to suppress technological development and economic development for aspiring humans. It is the ultimate class system, assaulting language, assaulting families, assaulting fathers, assaulting mothers. It is clearly and admittedly a cold-blooded scientific takeover system meant to destabilize humanity, poison humanity, dumb humanity down, and then phase us out through slow motion, soft kill, population reduction. And that's really the overriding message here, that this is a fight for our lives. This is a life and death struggle against the globalist. And we all need to just continually reassess the fact that we have a purpose-driven life. And the purpose-driven life is to be strong, to stand up for what's right, to build a better future for our children and a better world for all our children to live together in. And if that's the case, then we have to focus on the technocracy and what their goal is, and we have to face the true horrors of the program if we're ever going to have a chance to beat it. But the good news is, despite the fact that this program is so incredibly evil and people had trouble believing it was real, now that it's been forced out in the open, humanity is assessing the crisis and assessing the obstacles and very, very quickly developing systems and mass movements based on individual action that will bring this technocracy down. The social engineers of the New World Order want you to live in a haze. They want you to sleep. They want to be able to engineer your life and use you as a human resource cog. And as humanity awakens, they are intensifying their propaganda. They're intensifying their cultural war. They're intensifying their sabotage with electromagnetic radiation and toxins in the food and water in an attempt to bully you back into submission. So I ask you now to reflect on the fact of how important you are and how incredibly central it is that you redouble your efforts to spread the word and to speak out and to take action and to expose the globalist, but to also then offer a better system, which is the classic Americana, Judeo-Christian ethos that has made us so successful. But if we're going to preserve our republic and preserve our planet and have a way forward into all the incredible things that we're already discovering, we're going to have to admit to ourselves that the globalists are here, that they don't intend in cohabitating with us, and that they want to reduce world population forcibly so that they can inherit the earth and all the spoils for themselves. And that doesn't mean that we aren't overpopulated in some areas. It doesn't mean that humanity isn't fallen and, quite frankly, disgusting in many ways. It's simply realizing that the very worst of us are the ones that realize this and are taking advantage of the weakness to get full control, when those are the very types of people that have already engineered the system to make the public servile, wicked, corrupt, stupid, and lazy. The very worst of us are opportunistically making the crises as bad as they can and getting powerful and wealthy off of it at the expense of all of humanity and all the life on the planet and us individually. That's why we must oppose Hollywood. We must oppose the big central banks. We must oppose the communist systems in China. We must oppose the New World Order. We must empower humanity again. We must promote systems that make families strong again. We must rediscover what makes us strong: God, liberty, justice, freedom, hard work, focus, truth. And together, we can survive and thrive and go to the stars together. But the globalists want you to believe in a dystopia. That's why every movie, every show, every system they put out is about a dystopia. So you accept a nightmare future instead of taking the undreamt of amazing future that we can all have together if we are simply strong now and stand up for what's right. And by the way, the globalists sell the idea that being involved and being passionate is tiring and disempowering. It's the opposite. The animating contest of liberty is what will fulfill you. The journey towards a better world and a better universe is the destination. Our imperfection is our perfection. The great arc of human development is the vision in God's mind, but his creatures have free will and must decide to dance to the music he's playing, must decide to accept the world he's offered that we build. We are God's nanotech. We can build anything. We can do anything. We're made in his image. The globalists know that. They want to hoard that knowledge for themselves and go into the future alone without us. So you should know those decisions are being made without you. And they use terms like conspiracy theory so that you won't look into it, so you'll be lazy. Whether it's human-animal chimeras or human brains in rats we told you about 20 years ago, or fluoride-lowering IQs in babies, everything we told you is now being admitted because they can't hide it anymore because enough people have actually gone out and researched. We've already reached critical mass to a great extent, and all the pushback we see is the desperate death throes of the globalist. So again, thank you all for being part of InfoWars, and thank you all for standing strong for justice, and thank you all for supporting what we do here. Because without you, ladies and gentlemen, and without your action, without your will, without your spiritual love of God, without your prayers, without your connection, and all of us coming together, we don't have a prayer. But if we do come together, nothing on earth can stop us, because God will work through us. I'm Alex Jones for newswars.com, prisonplanet.com, and infowars.com. It is an act of rebellion against the globalist. It is an act of absolute military resistance against their global government operation when you spread the articles and the videos, and when you pray for us, and when you tell your friends, family, and neighbors about the different ways they can tune in, and when you financially support us. Everything I do is a non-zero sum game. Everything I stand for is a total win-win. Everything I am promoting is about a future for me, my children, and that means your children, in a world together. Do unto others as you'd have do unto you is simply common sense to have a civilization. And there have been people that have been using the fact that we're good against us. And now they've tried to bully us into submission through political correctness to tell us that we're actually the bad people. The New World Order has already fallen. It knows it's fallen. It believes if it can take you down and sit on a mountain of your skulls, that it will become God. When all they ever had to do was reach out, and they would touch God the moment they opened the door. But they can't open the door because they're of their father, the devil. And all those that hate me love death, Christ said.